Good afternoon and aloha. Welcome to our presentation this afternoon. My name is Patrice Flowers. I'm the director of the Center for Indo-Pacific Affairs and a professor at the Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. We're excited to welcome you to a talk on Japan's approach and contributions to the U.S.-Japan Security Alliance in light of regional circumstances. This event is co-hosted by the Center for Indo-Pacific Affairs and the Consulate General of Japan in Honolulu, with support from the Center for Japanese Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Today, we're honored to have Consul General Yoshinori Kodama here with us to introduce our speaker, retired Admiral Tomohisa Takei. Consul General Kodama arrived in Honolulu in 2023 from his previous post as Minister, Deputy Head of Mission at the Mission of Japan for ASEAN. Consul General Kodama has had a long and distinguished career at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which he joined in 1990 after graduating from the Faculty of Law at Tokyo University. He went on to earn a Master of Law from Cambridge University in 1992 and a PhD in Legal Studies in 1999. After the Consul General introduces our speaker, Mr. Takei will present for approximately 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. Before you leave, we'll also open a poll for you to submit anonymous feedback on this event. Okay, so we're hoping to have a lively discussion after the presentation. So I will turn it over now to Consul General Kodama.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Flores. Great introduction. Humbly, just you explain something about me, but the main guest is today, Admiral. Good afternoon, and from all over the world, maybe good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And from Hawaii, aloha, aloha to everybody. My name is Kodama, Consul General of Japan in Honolulu. It's a great pleasure. It's a great honor today to co-host this webinar with the University of Hawaii at Manoa Center for Indo-Pacific Affairs with the support from the Center for Japanese Studies. And welcome wholeheartedly, cordially, Admiral Takei, Tomohisa Takei, Japan's leading expert on international security and military strategy. Admiral Takei's distinguished career includes serving as the 32nd Chief of Staff of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force from 2014 to 2016, as well as numerous command and staff roles within the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. Additionally, he has held positions such as fellowships at the U.S. Naval War College and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, amongst others. He's also a recipient of several awards, including the French Légion d'honneur and multiple U.S. Legions of Merits. In today's webinar, Admiral Takei will discuss his views on the changes surrounding the global security environment and its implications for Japan and other U.S. allies, especially in the Western Pacific region. Concerning the region's ongoing challenges, it is particularly meaningful and timely that we hold this important seminar today with the presence of various stakeholders in Hawaii. And also we are now in the verge of a new Japanese Prime Minister in due course. This is such a great timing for us to think about security situation and the Japanese sort of direction and policy. So without further ado, let's welcome Admiral Tomohisa Takei. Thank you very much indeed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tomohisa Takei. Thank you for a kind introduction. I retired from the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force 9 years ago, then worked at the U.S. Naval War College for 3 years, and currently I research primarily on the maritime security issues at several Japanese think tanks. Today, I'd like to discuss recent international situation and its implication for Japan-U.S. security posture. The view I express today are on my own and do not reflect those of my organization or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Next, please. The agenda is shown on the screen. Throughout my career, the U.S. Navy was the most reliable partner, and the U.S.-Japan alliance was always a starting point of my thinking. This remains unchanged today. However, in the emerging new international landscape, the America's regional commitment seems to be less credible or shaky. I believe there are some areas that Japan can proactively contribute to improve this situation. This is another theme of my discussion. I openly share my concern with you, so some of the content may make your American audience disagree or feel uncomfortable. I apologize in advance. Next, please. First, I will discuss two lessons learned from the development in Ukraine war. The Ukraine war, which began with Russia's invasion in February 2022, has now lasted over 3 years and has become protracted war of attrition with no end in sight. Next, please. From this situation, I can find the following lessons. Firstly, the Ukraine war suggests that no one can deter a military invasion carried out with conviction and within the limited region by a nuclear superpowers and the permanent member of United Nations Security Council. Secondly, it also indicates that when nuclear superpowers become involved as adversaries or allies, both sides prioritizing avoiding this escalation to nuclear weapons, making prolonged conventional warfare likely occur. Here, the nuclear superpower refers to Russia and the United States, and the region refers to Ukraine territory. Even before Russia's invasion began, President Biden repeatedly stated that the United States would not intervene militarily. He also publicly expressed strong concern that if the United States were to join the war, it could escalate into a nuclear war and eventually lead to Armageddon. President Putin has been deterred as well. He had issued diplomatic message that thinks about use of nuclear weapons on several occasions, but he has not yet resorted to their actual use. Applying these lessons to East Asia, the following can be said. In the future, if China attempts to alter the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, the United States would not be able to deter it. Second, if the situation escalates to US military intervention, both the US and China would likely avoid nuclear war. This would make a Taiwan contingency a protracted war of attrition. I believe this possibility will increase significantly if the deployed number of strategic nuclear forces in the US and China reach near parity by the 2030s. At the military parade in Beijing, October 3rd, China demonstrated that it is advancing its nuclear capability at a faster rate than previously anticipated. China and Russia assert that to strengthen the defense capability in Europe and Japan signified a resurgence of militarism. However, this is merely a pretext to justify their own rapid military expansion. Next, please. The next lesson we can learn from the Ukraine war is that deterrence is more cost-effective than war. The Ukraine military continued to deplete its military and weapons and ammunition. In just 3 years, Ukraine has received military aid exceeding its 2021 military budget by more than 110 times. Beyond that, destruction of Ukraine cities makes the cost and time required for reconstruction impossible to predict. It is important to remember it took the United Kingdom approximately 60 years to reimburse the United States for its wartime loan assistance during World War II. War is costly, and aid is never free, not even for allies. Next, please. Additionally, as many experts said, the Taiwan contingency would likely cause unprecedented economic shocks to the world. No other country can replace Taiwan, which produces over 60% of the world's cutting-edge semiconductor and is the sole source of the highest performance chips. If a Taiwan contingency were to cause the semiconductor industry to halt production, it would immediately trigger global economic turmoil with no end in sight. China is Japan's largest trading partner. Taiwan ranks fourth. The Japanese government would also face the challenges of protecting numerous Japanese companies operating in China and Taiwan, and Japanese nationals residing there. Discussing strategic value of senkakus for Taiwan contingencies, they would become a critical strategic target at the onset of war. In short, given Japan's economic ties with China and Taiwan as well as its own geopolitical location, Japan has better reason than most of the world to prevent Taiwan contingencies. Next, please. Over the past 2 years, China has increased the scope and intensity of its military activities. According to several experts, China appears to be making a final preparation for an invasion of Taiwan. History teaches us that there are two ways to maintain independence from China that is now a great power. One is to build coalition to counter China. The other is to enter China's tributary systems and accept its rule. If East Asian countries wish to avoid being integrated into a new tributary system, they have no choice but to unite. While Europe's comprehensive power, a combined power, surpasses Russia even without the United States, the country of the Western Pacific alone cannot counter China. Realistically, the United States is the only country capable of leading a regional alliance. Next, please. At a time like this, the biggest challenge for us is the credibility of US commitment to the region seems significantly shaken by the war in the Ukraine. The commitment is a comprehensive product, including political, economic, military, and cultural aspects, and so on. Regarding military tier, I believe the credibility of the US military has not been shaken at all. In recent years, multilateral exercises within the Indo-Pacific area of responsibility have intensified in both quality and quantity. Freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait continues. With increasing opportunity for the multiple navies to conduct independently or multilaterally for freedom of navigation operations, military exchanges between the United States and Taiwan also deepen annually. I think the greatest challenge is credibility of upper tier commitment. As I said, President Biden's instruction on the Ukraine war has been consistently restrained, often deterred by Russia's nuclear intimidation, and has planted concern among allies and partners about whether American extended deterrence would work when it is needed. Since shortly after taking the office, President Trump has been committed to ending the war in Ukraine. However, his repeated proposal and repeated changes have caused confusion and concern among allies. Next, please. In particular, the summit meeting with President Putin on August 15 at Alaska, coupled with conciliatory tariff negotiations with China and a tolerant stance towards Israel's excessive military actions, that has given the international community a sense of the resurgence of great power politics by the United States, Russia, and China. New great power politics is might makes right. and the world cannot prevent nuclear superpowers from intervening in small nations. The Alaska talks convinced us that the world is entering uncharted waters. I can find three fundamental principles that should govern international relations arising from the new great power politics. First, as shown in the screen, it is important to note that no one is able to oppose violations or unilateral interpretation of international law by the three nuclear superpowers. They are also a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, even if it is an infringement of sovereignty or territorial integrity of member states, which are the most fundamental principle of the United Nations Charter. Ultimately, the international community will have no choice but to accept their infringement. Second, even in the event of territorial encroachment by two nuclear superpowers upon the territory of neighboring countries, the United Nations is unable to activate collective security measures. Maintain their independence, neighboring countries will eventually be compelled to relinquish territory to them. And thirdly, their territory seized by nuclear superpowers or relinquished to them can never be recovered. If my hypothesis is correct, Ukraine will be unable to recover the territories occupied by Russia. Regarding Senkakus, if they are occupied, Japan will need to make even greater effort than Ukraine has in the war to recover them. In other words, we are observing the resurgence of the era where three nuclear superpowers really encroach upon other countries' territory and expand their sphere of influence. Some experts said the current situation as resembling the pre-World War II that was an era of colonial readjustment. However, the existence of nuclear weapons makes it extremely difficult to stop the momentum once nuclear superpowers begin to change status quo. I think the situation will persist as long as the authoritarian regime continues or until new weapons capable of offsetting nuclear weapons emerge. Next, please. The emerging international situation has the following three implications for America's allies in East Asia. First, the allies must dedicate all their effort to maintaining the status quo. To achieve this, they must enhance deterrence. Clearly, each country must voluntarily make their every effort to secure its territory and increase defense spending to strengthen its defense posture, even without US request. Since assuming the position of General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party in 2012, President Xi Jinping has made it clear that Taiwan unification is essential for the rejuvenation of Chinese nation. Therefore, President Xi's Taiwan policy has no alternatives but unification of Taiwan. Once China begins changing the status quo, it cannot stop halfway, and there is no turning back. We must assume China will not hesitate to escalate militarily to achieve unification if necessary. Second, allies should collaborate with the US government to maintain America's commitment to East Asia. The greatest challenge is rebuilding a strong and enduring US presence. Allies must take proactive steps to restore America's deterrence. This includes helping to revitalize the US defense industrial base. This was unnecessary for allies when the US was mighty, but that is no longer the case. Third, as the United States provide the extended deterrence to Japan, Japan must provide reassurance to the United States instead. I want to talk about the second and the third point in the following slide. Next, please. The first is regarding revitalizing the US defense industrial base, which formed the foundation of America's commitment. According to the media report, US Department of Defense completed a final draft of the 2025 National Defense Strategy at the end of August. The draft was reportedly distributed to Defense Department officials. The article said there are 4 key pillars to the NDS. They are the defending the homeland, deterring China, including burden sharing with allied and partner, and revitalizing the defense industrial base. Regarding the third pillar, including burden sharing with allied and partners, they are already making substantial effort to increase their defense budget to reduce their too much dependence on the United States. The fourth pillar, revitalizing the defense industrial base, is the foundation of US commitment to the region, and it is an area in which Japan can contribute significantly. The shrinking and hollowing out of America's defense industrial base has progressed over the last 20 plus years, since the defense budget was cut by 1/3. Recovery will likely require as much time as was lost, along with substantial investment. In order to regain lost technological capabilities and skilled engineers, the United States must start with education. The Trump administration prioritized revitalizing the shipbuilding base to ensure the superiority of the US Navy. Japan, the world's 3rd largest shipbuilding country, could contribute to this effort, but it seems unlikely that it will achieve revitalization until tension in the Taiwan Strait are expected to increase by 2027. I think the best way to enhance US Navy capability in short time is to improve the operational tempo, we call it in short, of the US Navy vessels who are deployed in East Asia in the Western Pacific. The Japan-US Navy has high equipment compatibility and maintenance, repair, and overhaul, in short, MRO, is the area where Japanese companies are proud of it. I think it is realistic for Japan to start with MRO support and gradually expand cooperation into the shipbuilding sectors. This was agreed upon during Secretary of the Navy John Ferran visit to Japan in April with Defense Minister Nakatani. Japan defense industry has a capability and willingness to meet US Navy's requirement. The second area involves strengthening STEM education and enhancing the human resource basis for the defense industries. Since the United States and Japan share the common understanding of the issues, this is an area where Japan can collaborate effectively. For about a decade before, Japanese government has intensively focused on increasing enrollment rate and enhancing the value of STEM education. In Japan's case, the proportion of students entering STEM university is 10% point below the OECD average, prompting effort to increase the value of STEM education. Cooperation in the education sector is the area with relatively little friction, making high synergy between Japan and the United States highly anticipated. Japan has continuously built combat vessels, enabling it to provide various support for training highly skilled engineers of the US shipbuilding companies. In particular, Japan possesses advanced submarine construction technology and can assist in training engineers For example, by teaching American welders techniques for the welding ultra-high tensible steels. Only 3 countries in the world can have a capability to welding the ultra-high tensile steel. It is Russia, United States, and Japan. Cooperation on human resources, including education, has broad implications and contribute more to strengthen US industrial base than investment in the US shipbuilding industry alone. Next, please. Next, Japan must work to reassure the United States and maintain the credibility of extended deterrence. Japan will soon possess the counter-strike capability, which will be the opportunity to strengthen the reassurance. If the counter-strike capability is integrated with the US nuclear forces to complement the escalation ladder, it will improve the credibility of extended deterrence. On the other hand, the stronger the integration, the greater the concern in the United States about unintended escalation by Japan. We should remember the United States has incrementally increased the type and uses of weapons provided to the Ukraine government while observing Russia's reactions. In the event of Taiwan contingencies requiring joint US-Japan action, the US would likely request that Japan act in a unified manner to prevent unwanted escalation. In such scenario, to reduce US concern, Japan must implement measures to address them during peacetime and demonstrate its willingness to share the cost of nuclear operations. Next, please. Finally, I'd like to note that the American allies, including Japan, must continue their efforts to enhance their own value to the United States. According to the US Nuclear Posture Review, the US government places the fundamental role of the nuclear weapons in deterrence, stating that the US would only consider the use of nuclear weapons in extremely circumstances to defend the vital interests of the United States or its allies and partners. The vital interests referred to here are the vital interests to the United States, not those determined by the allies and partners. In other words, if the United States deems the interests of its allies and partners as less vital, the very process of considering the use of nuclear weapons would vanish. Next, please. According to Mr. Elbridge Colby's statement, a Senate confirmation testimony, Taiwan is a vital interest for the United States, though not existential interest. It can be said this is also true for Japan. He did not define existential interest, but they can be understood as an interest such as territory and sovereignty, to which United States would unconditionally commit. This implies that military commitment to Japan is not guaranteed. Japan happened to locate on the strategic front line of the most important area of the United States. On the other hand, there is no solid basis for taking the United States commitment to security for granted in the future. Anyway, Japan must continue its effort to remain a vital interest for the United States. Specifically, in addition to what was mentioned today, the Japanese government is undertaking the initiative already taking initiative. For example, revitalizing economic strength while coordinating closely with the United States, building a defense posture that does not rely excessively on the US military power. This includes establishing the Japan Self-Defense Forces Joint Operations Center, we call JJOC in short, and ensuring the implementation of 2022 national defense strategies. Third initiative is building comprehensive deterrence in the coordination with allied and partner countries centered on the United States. Next, please. To summarize my presentation, given the current international situation, Japan must strengthen its defense capabilities as well as closely coordinate policy with the United States to ensure Japan remains a vital interest for America. Thank you for your attention. Your question and comment are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that really interesting presentation. It's very timely. We already have a question in the chat, in the Q&A, so I will go ahead and ask that one. This question comes from Tokyo, actually, and it says that on slide 13, you imply that the United States would use nuclear weapons to defend NATO, EU, and Ukraine, plus every other country the US is involved in, and that's a question mark. This seems rather broad and a bit unclear. It seems like an extreme overreach if it's true. And so I think that the question just really wants a little bit more discussion, especially as you said that this limitation to vital interest or even existential interest, you know, seems to kind of narrow that window a little bit. So maybe if you can make that connection a little bit more clear for the questioner about when the United States would actually get involved and be willing to use nuclear weapons.
Yeah. I think it depends on how and what the U.S. president think about using nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot expect or foresee which situation United States will use nuclear weapons to defend or to deter. And the advisory, their action to their partners. But as for, yeah, we need to case by case, a case study to when the U.S. will commit to some nuclear weapons to defend these countries. And some will say that both for China, United States, the nuclear weapon is the final result for the defense operation. Even though the Taiwan Strait contingencies, the combat, the military option, combat will maybe only maybe conventional exchange conventional weapon is maybe the main objective and the main measures to fight to continue the fight. But United States or some US was attacked by or intimidated by nuclear weapons like Guam and Hawaii. United and the almost end of the war, US could be lost in the war. The United States may use nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons to defend Taiwan Strait. So as for Japan, the situation is more complicated because there are many American soldiers and their families reside in Japan. There are many US bases in Japan. Once Japan was attacked even conventionally, it is possible United States do not actually use the nuclear weapons, but use for some deterrence posture or kind of intimidation to stop the aggression, the advisories. I think anyway the decision depends on how the US president think about whether it is the timing to intimidate or actually use of nuclear weapon to defend Japan and the other friendly countries in the Western Pacific.
Yes. Thank you very much. I mean, that really does, I think, emphasize that this issue is not so cut and dry, right? That even myself, when I first heard, when it's in the U.S. vital interest, I was thinking, well, that seems to shift and change over time. And so you've made it clear that some of this really does depend on the U.S. president. And so that's really sobering. There's another question here. What impacts would be predicted, oh, excuse me, what impacts would be predicted on the U.S. island of Guam during a non-nuclear confrontation between China and the U.S. over Taiwan? So there's this interest in what might be the impact on Guam.
Yeah, I think it is very interesting topics. One of the interesting topics, the Japanese government should consider a company with the United States. I think it is possible when the purpose of the U.S. and the Chinese attack in Guam is, I think, to prevent United States intervene to the Taiwan contingencies.
Mm.
So I think the probability of the attack would be high. That is one of the reasons why U.S. Indo-Pacific strengthen the missile defense, missile defense posture in the Guam Island. So deploying the BMD asset in the Guam. I think initially for the first time for the other country for the equipping the newest early warning radar and missile asset there. So to attack Guam is I think it is probable. It is probable. It is. I think when China begin to attack Guam Island, it means the United States already intervened in Taiwan.
Okay.
At that time, I'm sorry, the Japanese, the military bases, U.S. military bases in Japan, and also the self-defense forces bases in Japan would be the other target.
Okay.
The attack.
Okay.
Simultaneously with the gun.
Okay. Yeah, sitting here in Honolulu, it makes me wonder about not necessarily that same question, right? I mean, of course, that is something that is an important question for folks who reside here, right? But I'm thinking more broadly about what does this mean for Hawaii, right? Like not just the question of the possibility of attack or something like that, but this particular moment where there is a lot of shifts happening with the new administration. If we think broadly about the impacts on Hawaii, given its position, given that Indo-Pacific is here and other things, can you talk about that a little bit? So maybe broaden it out from a discussion of possible attack to other kinds of implications for impact on Hawaii.
I think, thank you very much. So the recognition is right. I think Hawaii and Guam is not covered by NATO. So when some country attack Guam and the Hawaii, it's not the exercise. It's not trigger to exercise the NATO Article 5 or mutual defense, right? Okay. So I think from this point of view, without when attacked in Guam and Hawaii, it's not the time. It's not the cause. Introduce NATO allied partner to defend to the defense operation in the Pacific area. I think this is one of the reasons. Another one is Hawaii and Guam is the bases where provide U.S. the military power to the Western Pacific. Without Guam, without Hawaii, United States will lost the bases to project their powers to the Asian Pacific. So I think the history repeats itself. I think the geography let the country repeat history itself. This is my comment. So when someone wants to prevent United intervention to the Western Pacific area, the Guam and Hawaii, the military bases could be the good target for preventing United States intervening in the area. We should remember so before World War II, the United States have a time to rebuild their military powers in Hawaii, and even after the Pearl Harbor attack. But in the recent years, the progress of the war is quite rapid, quite very quick. There is no time to recover the U.S. military power before United States intervening the Western Pacific area. So the timeline is quite different from the before World War II and now. So from this viewpoint, the Hawaii and the Guam could be the target at the initial stage of the war. This is my comment.
I see. Oh, that is definitely sobering. I think that your talk focuses a lot on the relationship, right? And the change in relationships and how, this changed environment really does, require Japan and others in East Asia to reassess how they deal with the United States, and that there's a lot of that there's increased need to reassure the U.S. But the questioner here thinks it's a little bit more, cut and dry, a little bit more clear, and suggests that by the U.S. pushing Japan to increase defense spending, that is the message to Japan, that Japan is on its own in terms of its defense. So I'm wondering how you think about that, right? Because I think that your talk suggests that the relationship is still important, the relationship is still central, and it seems like this questioner is not so sure about that.
So when I making the report relating to the Ukraine war, as you mentioned, what you mentioned is one of the some difficult point. To let my thinking to the world.
Okay.
Reassurance is the kind of some technical term of nuclear deterrence, nuclear policy study. Reassurance is there is the two for the NATO. Reassurance that they share the nuclear weapons in their territory and share the risk that may receive from nuclear deterrence by NATO countries. But in Japan, there is no such a occasion like in NATO country. There is no nuclear weapons in Japan. What reassure United States now is to enhance the host nation support for U.S. military force deployed, and also provide some comfortable circumstances for their family staying in Japan. That is made a kind of reassurance. However, as I mentioned, when Japan introduced the counter-strike capability,
Yeah.
Japanese counter-strike capability are integrated to U.S. nuclear posture and make the radar of nuclear deterrence.
Yeah.
Japan should act in unison with the United States. So when they use the counter-strike capability, it is the kind of the authority for the U.S. government, Japanese government, but Japanese government should consider some cooperative. Should consider Japanese counter-strike capability is a part of nuclear deterrence. So I think before using I think for the Japanese government, counter-strike capability is a last resort to defend Japan. However, Japanese government should consider to consultation with the U.S. government to actual use of the counter-strike capability. It is very difficult decision for your Japanese government, because according to the National Defense Strategy or National Security Strategy in 2022, the timing, when Japanese government decide to use counter-strike capability in the last timing, when you, for example, there are several hundred bunch of the ballistic missile attack to Japan. Japan already depleted its missile defense capability. There's no measures without the using the counter-strike capability. The Japanese government want to use counter-strike capability without some consulting the United States. However, we are covered by U.S. deterrence. Even it's a very difficult decision, Japanese government should consult U.S. government to use counter-strike capability at this situation.
Okay, I see. That is, thank you very much. I think that's a much more nuanced understanding of the situation, and so I appreciate that. I hope that answered our participants' question. There's a lot of questions here, really concerned about other countries in the region. So I am going to try to, just combine those questions into one. One is, sort of thinking about what role, if any, will North Korea assume if the situation escalates between China and the United States? And the second question sort of broadens out, right? It broadens out that if there's aggression, how would that impact Southeast Asian countries? So thinking specifically about Singapore, Thailand, etc.
The aggression is from North Korea?
No, aggression in terms of the Taiwan contingency, I think is what the I think that's what the questioner is asking about.
Yeah, thank you very much. North Korean issues is very complicated. So, as you know, Japan and North Korea, Russia, and China is a nuclear the country. There may be quasi-allies of authoritarian regimes. So when we consider the Taiwan Strait, maybe the Korean Peninsula and Northern Territory of Japan would be the second and the third theater of operation once China want to ask them support of North Korea and Russia. So Japanese government and maybe United States, Indo-Pacific should consider simultaneously the situation on Korean Peninsula as well. So However, as for the North Korea, I think the leader Kim Jong-un clearly understand to begin the some invasion, the South Korea is the beginning of end of North Korea. Even he possesses several nuclear weapons. So I think the North Korea maybe demonstrate the military in case of Taiwan Strait contingencies. However, the actual military operation is, I think the possibility is, I think it is unlikely. However, the South Korea and the U.S. forces in Korea, South Korea should prepare for the worst case of scenarios. So I think that scenarios, then South Korea, the U.S. forces, the Korea should enhance preparedness to counter the North Korea's aggression. As for the Taiwan contingencies, how the influence on the Southeast Asian countries, I think maybe the worst case, if Japan and the United States lose the war with China over the Taiwan, I think the completely different strategic situation will emerge in the Western Pacific than now. In the Western Pacific, where both the South China Sea and East China Sea have become China's maritime territory, and the countries in the region will be forced to live under China's new tributary systems. This is a favorable situation for either the country in the region or the world. I think the current the Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thai is moving to the global south. Departing from the sphere of United States. However, I think this is not good decision for them. What we should do is to enhance or to strengthen U.S. credibility of the commitment to this region, and it is kind of the key issues to maintain the status quo and the stability and the prosperity in these regions. As for the Taiwan Island, when we imagine the geographic location of Taiwan, it controls three straits. One is the Taiwan Strait, the Bashi Channel, and between Taiwan and Yonaguni Island. Most important strait is Bashi Channel. It is entrance and exit of South China Sea. When the China occupy and control the whole Taiwan, maybe the freedom of navigation in the Bashi Channel will be the hinders, and maybe the free usage of the sea is not guaranteed by the whole country to have the relation the Southeast Asian countries. Now the Southeast Asia as a center of economic growth in the world, and population global more than 50% of the population is yield in Southeast Asia and Asia. I think we consider such a situation to keep the freedom of navigation in the Pacific Channel and to keep the democratic country in Taiwan Island has great importance, not only for Japan and the United States, but also for the Asian ASEAN countries.
Thank you very much. We have several more questions here, but I'm just going to ask one. I'm going to ask one last question just because we're going to be at time soon. And this one gets directly back into your presentation and asks about slide 14, which the questioner says that slide 14 suggests a greater increase in military spending for Japan's taxpayers. And she wonders, how much, what is going to be the price tag here? And it also seems that the U.S. military presence in Japan will have to increase. And so wondering again, what would that look like? How much would that have to expand to, maintain in that area?
Yeah, this is my personal comment, but I think these comments shared by the Japanese defense officials to increase defense budget must be attained because everything is expensive than 2 years ago, comparing to the more expensive comparing to the price of 2 years ago. Now Japanese Ministry of Defense requests the biggest budget for the next fiscal year, but it is not enough to cover whole requirement of the self-defense forces of Japan. To increase more than 2% must be attained if they want, the Japanese government want to get some effective defense posture to defend Taiwan. 3%, 5%, I don't know, but the 2% is not enough. That's my comment. And as you know, Japan is the new Miss Takaichi's administration will emerge in coming days. One of the topics, hidden topics for her government, is how to increase defense budget.
Yes.
The number one is to improve the economic situation, but how to increase defense budget, one of the other topics for her government.
Yes.
Under the economic strained situations.
Thank you very much. I mean, these are, this leaves us with all of those questions related to demographics, the demographic shift, both in Japan and the United States. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to take up those issues here. Some folks are writing on that and thinking about these issues. But it certainly is something at the top of mind, I think, for both the US and Japan. But I want to thank you so much for a really interesting talk today. Thank you for spending so much time with us. We still, like I said, we had just, so many questions here. And so our audience was very engaged. And I think that demonstrates the timeliness of this talk and also where people's interests are at this moment. So we very much appreciate you and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I expect United States will strengthen the commitment to this region. This is this is my last comment for your government and the American people. Thank you very much today.
Wonderful. Thank you.